We are so thrilled to see all of you here. It's just really remarkable how much these workshops have taken off and how much interest there is in this topic. So I'm Ingrid Alt, and I'm the Executive Director of Think Local First, and Marianne Nisley from Whole Foods Market and I have been talking about how do we work together. And Marianne, would you raise your hand? Marianne's in the back. And Marianne was sort of the catalyst that got this ball rolling, and we invited Growing Hope to come as well. And we owe a big debt of gratitude to Christine Easley, who's sitting at the table over there, along with Justin Smith. All four of us are the organizers, so we're the people who have brought you together in this room tonight. And we're really excited to have you. We all have different areas of expertise, and bringing everybody together has been quite the experience. As a reminder, we are filming, so if you're uncomfortable being on film, then you should wear your sunglasses. So just word to the wise. Well, we really wanted to be able to bring this to as big an audience as possible, and we owe Dave Chappelle and his team, Mary and, I'm sorry, I don't know the other, Jessica, a debt of gratitude, because they're volunteers here helping us put this on so that we can reach a really big, broad audience. How many people are already operating a food-based business in the room? Would you raise your hand so we can kind of see? Okay, so we've got a few. All right, well, we were curious who was going to be coming to all these different workshops, because they're all very different. And we weren't sure how many people who had already delved into this would be here tonight. And how many of you want to start a food-based business? A whole bunch of you. Well, you're in the right room then. So thank you for coming and welcome. I am not the person who has the area of expertise to talk to you tonight. I am fortunate to be able to introduce the three people who I think you're going to find really kind of fascinating in the work that they do. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to hear from our three speakers, and they're all going to take a few minutes to talk about their area of expertise and give you an overview of what they've been working on and how they might be able to help you. And then once we've heard from all three speakers, then we'll have an opportunity for the audience to do question and answer. So when you're ready, and as you listen to the evening, jot little notes to yourself so you won't forget what your question is, and then we'll be happy to address them after everybody has had a chance to speak. So the first speaker we're going to hear from is Jessica Meissner. And I'll let you explain what an economic anthropologist is, but that's the title that she has. And she works with The Shed, which is a business and employment cooperative. She also did some research for the Washtenaw County Community and Economic Development Corporation regarding entrepreneurship and small businesses. So she'll be reporting on that research tonight. Let's see, she's going to share some general information about what is possible in our community, because that's really what this conversation is tonight. This conversation is what is possible, what can we each do in the community, and how do we move forward, especially in the local food area, which is very hot in this community. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you hear what she has found. She's really very fascinating. And then we're going to hear from Charlie Penner, who's the regional director of, and this is a big mouthful, the Michigan Small Business and Technology Development Center. And what they do is they offer help to entrepreneurs and how to get your business started. And he's going to propose some basic questions for you all that you should be asking if you're thinking about delving into this area. What are the few things that you need to know right away? Nothing complex, but just some general questions you should be asking to see if this is a viable idea that you have. And then our final speaker is one of my favorite people. His name is David Klingenberger, and we invited him because he has a great story, and I'm going to let him tell it rather than me. But he's a local food entrepreneur who has great expertise in getting a business up off the ground and running, and how collaboration and partnerships are really important when you're delving into these areas. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite Jessica up to the stage, and we'll let her share. And
so I'm really excited about this turnout, that there's this many people here willing to come and talk about our local food system. I have been, as Ingrid mentioned, I just completed a research project that was funded by Washtenaw County Office of Community and Economic Development, looking at small business and entrepreneurship and the potential for cooperative business models to help develop our economy and as good business development tools. This is one of 4 research projects that was recently commissioned by Washtenaw County, and it really represents a really cool shift in the thinking of economic development professionals, and it's part of a national movement. Economic development has traditionally been focused on attracting and retaining big business and offering tax subsidies for big business. So I will tell you a little bit about that research project, what's coming out of that kind of new economic development movement that's focused on small local business and focused on the locally owned business as part of the strongest part, our backbone of our economy, really locally. And then I want to talk to you just briefly about some of the results that came out of a couple of these studies. And a little bit, I'll touch on my next project that's coming in there. And where we're going after the research on small business is we're actually establishing a cooperative to help facilitate small businesses share resources. And the first thing we'll be doing is offering shared back office services, temporary staffing, accounting services. We'll be negotiating as a co-op for discounts on other business support services that new businesses and existing businesses need. So we found that as really the biggest initial impact that we could have to help support small businesses is help them with their staffing. So that'll be our first project. And as we finished up this research, and I've been working on a lot of financial models for this co-op and doing all this business planning, and I was just complaining this weekend that I felt like I was losing touch with what it was all about. Like, what am I doing staring at all these numbers all the time? I'm a social scientist. An economic anthropologist is like a cross between it's a little sociology and a little behavioral economics. So it's all about people for me. So as I'm sitting and writing this stuff, and when Ingrid and I were talking about preparing for this talk, she asked me, you know, the most important question was, what is possible? And as I was preparing to talk to you guys tonight, I really started to remember what this is all about. And for me anyway, personally, what it's about is putting the decisions about how we make a living, how we provide for ourselves, what we buy, and what we eat in our hands. Those decisions are our decisions here locally. And so the fact that there's so many people that have come tonight and are interested in starting a local food business, are interested in the local food business system, is really exciting to me, because that's really what it's about. It's about us as a community providing for ourselves. And it really, it gets me riled up. So, but without further ado, I'll talk to you about this new movement towards local economies. I'm sure you've heard about slow food, buy local movements. Local economic development professionals are starting to catch on. They're starting to realize that there's a leakage involved. They call it leakage. And there's calculators that can tell us exactly how much we're leaking our productive power. So when we spend money on for a big business, or we attract a big business that's not headquartered here, right? Or we import, we're actually, that money, that profit is going somewhere outside of our community, and it doesn't continue to circulate, and it doesn't create more jobs. So there's a huge impact whenever we make a choice towards a local business. And there are communities all over that are starting to produce research and knowledge to help us understand how we can do that. How can we support a locally based economy? How can we keep our jobs local? How can we keep the money that we spend, those profits, local? So Washtenaw County is one of those progressive governments, as I said, that's doing work and helping put infrastructure in this place and doing research to understand how we can create a more robust and diverse local economy. One of the studies that was commissioned was a study specifically of our local food system. Everybody just raise your hand in the back if you can't hear me. I feel like I'm yelling, but I can't tell if I'm connecting. So you can't hear me very well? Maybe over there by the noise. So the local food system study that just came out was led by Michael Schumann. He's a nationally known author. He's done studies at communities around the country to help them understand their local economy and how they can best support it. And then one of the results that was really striking to me, the overall takeaway was there's so much opportunity for new small local businesses in our food sector. The opportunity is enormous. It's huge. Across different food sector businesses, there's anywhere from $2 million to $35 million and up in almost every single food business sector, where we could shift our demand, our local demand, to a local business. So if you're coming up as a local business in food, and you can convince the local demand to buy your product instead of a national brand, there's just endless possibility. There's so much unmet demand for local food. So whatever you're thinking about starting is there. And I just want to put it in a little perspective. For instance, just to name one sector, if we shifted just 25% of our food spending on bakeries from like national brands to a local bakery, and who doesn't want to do that? You want fresh bread, right? It's not, you know, it's made right here in local fresh. If we shifted just 25% of what we spent, we would create 250 new jobs just from shifting a quarter out of every dollar you spend on bread to a local business. There's 250 jobs to be had locally for that. And I will leave you with a couple of ideas about the big picture, why it's important, our local food system in particular. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the research that came out of small businesses and some of the challenges that local food businesses face. And local food businesses do face challenges that are unique to food. And one of those challenges, there's more information, by the way. The full reports on all of this research are available online. If anybody wants a copy or the link sent to them, just sign up for the email list. Let me know that you want a link, and I'm happy to email you the full reports, because I don't want to go into a lot of data here today. But one thing that was really striking, one of the challenges for food businesses is their margins are very tight. And you're competing against national companies that have economies of scale. They have big distribution companies. They have lots of staff. They use their facilities 100% of the time. And so you're competing with really, really tight margins. What that's led to me, one of the most interesting things that came out of this research, a lot of local food businesses have a strong preference to sell at farmers markets because they can get better prices, there's less overhead cost to the sale itself, and they can have better margins. There is a huge, huge opportunity for selling outside of the farmers market. There's a huge opportunity unmet to sell business to business, retail, restaurants, and institutions. And there's a challenge to that. You have to plan very carefully, and it's really important. The follow-up workshops that come after this will talk about how to sell to those markets. But I just wanted to throw out there that at some point, it looks like we may be approaching saturation and demand for farmers market products. It's a great place to sell your product. It's a great place to get started, but it's not enough to sustain a long-term business. So these future workshops that are talking about how to sell to other markets, that's where the giant opportunity is. There's huge opportunity that's unmet to sell to business and institutions. So I'll let Charlie talk a little bit about how to think carefully about your business plan and how to get started. But I will say that some of what came out of the research is that food businesses in particular, given their tight margins, given the competition from national brands, do need to be especially careful to be data-driven, to gather good data and make good business decisions based on, your real costs and your data. And Charlie's great at helping people stay in line with that. And the other thing is food businesses have a great opportunity for reducing their costs by sharing. Finding business partners. More than 50% of the businesses, and they were across the range from startups to late-stage businesses, that responded to our survey said that they had significant challenges that potentially held their businesses back from growing in being able to find good, strong business partners. So that partnership, there's this myth, I think, that entrepreneurs are supposed to do it all and do it all themselves. And it's a complete myth. High-tech entrepreneurs have whole research departments at universities behind them. They have venture capitalists partnering with them. Big business partners with people all the time. we need to sort of rethink our idea about what it means to be a local business entrepreneur, a small business entrepreneur. You don't have to do it all and do it all yourself. You can reach out and form partnerships and collaborate and share with others. So David's been very successful at that, and I'll let David tell you a little bit about his story on how he's been able to collaborate with others. But I just want to highlight a couple of the opportunities that I think we should be thinking about in the back of our heads, ways that we can create efficiencies by sharing and collaborating and cooperating among businesses. And the biggest ones that came out of the research were sharing facilities and space. There's a lot of excess capacity that can be captured by sharing facilities and space. Purchasing in bulk. Find partners that need similar supplies as you and purchase in bulk and reduce your costs. Collaborating for sales, CSAs, community-supported agriculture, are a big new movement, and there are a lot of value-add food producers that are getting involved in CSAs as well, and that's a great way to collaborate in order to sell. But also sharing delivery. Find people that have similar customers as you're getting started, or even as you already are. Cross-promote your products. Share some delivery vans. Maybe if you're doing product demos at a retail store, find a partner and agree to demo each other's products. Some product that goes well with whatever that you're making. And I just want to encourage you guys to do this. The last thing, well, there's two more. Group gap. Finding partners to do certifications and training with can really reduce the cost of those certifications and training. And labor is a big, big issue. Small businesses have a very high degree of variability, so they hire and they're very busy, and then they're kind of slow while they're out selling some more, and they don't need as much staff, and then they're busy again. And food businesses on top of that are highly seasonal. Many of them are totally seasonal. There's a big cost of that employee turnover. For the average food manufacturer, each employee that you have to replace costs $6,800, $6,800 every time you have to replace an employee. So finding ways to share labor and share staff with other businesses, finding ways, well, that's one of the things that we want to put in place with a shed, the co-op. But you guys can also just do it among yourselves. If you've got a friend and you're both in food businesses and you've got different times that you're busy, share labor. That can really, really, really reduce your costs and the cost of turnover. So I promised to give you a couple of big picture why our food system is so important. Why is local food such a big deal? And why is there so much momentum behind it right now? Well, there are a lot of reasons, but I'll just name a couple. Freshness, right? Local food is fresher, and that has a much higher nutritional value when your food is fresh. Local food costs less and has a lower carbon footprint. It takes less of a distance to get to your table. That has an environmental impact. There's a huge social impact to being able to reach out and meet the person who made your food, to know what goes in your food. There's community that gets created around food that's just a value you can't even quantify, and it's so important to be able to know where your food comes from and how it's made. And then there's a huge economic development impact for food. And this again is from the Michael Schumann report that the county just recently commissioned. If we shifted 25 cents out of every dollar we spent on food to a local food producer, Washtenaw County would create 2,193 new jobs. So to put that in perspective, 1 out of 5 people unemployed right now in Washtenaw County would be put back to work if we just spent 25% of what we spend right now on local businesses instead of non-local businesses and national brands. That would actually create $75 million in new wages, $75 million locally that would then get circulated and spent on more local businesses. So there's this multiplier effect. It impacts our entire economy, and the impact's huge. So when Ingrid asked what's possible, anything's possible in food. There's so many opportunities, and there's so many opportunities to have an impact that goes beyond just your business. It's really important. So I'm so glad that you guys are all here, and I want to introduce Charlie Penner. SBTDC is really a great resource for new businesses and existing businesses to get some advice and get some good, solid, a good, solid, objective eye on your plans. So here's Charlie.
Great. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I know this is a really exciting topic and one that there's lots of interest in among people around throughout the county and around the country in local food. And I'm reminded that the last time I was here giving a presentation, it was to the EMU Collegiate Entrepreneurship Organization, and there was a young couple who was here who wanted to open a brew pub, very similar to what they've done here at the corner, and they have gone on to be extremely successful up in South Lyon and are running a successful local business with locally sourced ingredients as much as possible. So there's lots of examples of people out doing this and making good livings for themselves and good livelihoods and contributing to their communities. So you know, David is one great example, and I know there's other great examples here in the audience, but people are doing this. Jessica's given you a great overview of, you know, the food systems and the county economy and how, you know, small shifts in purchasing can have big ripple effects. I'm going to kind of look at it from the other side, looking at it from the individual business owner's perspective. So as was mentioned by, as Ingrid mentioned, I'm the regional director for the Michigan Small Business and Technology Development Center, and that's not a sample of our marketing capabilities. That's what happens when Congress does your branding. You get a name like that. So we have to answer the phone that way, and it has its complications. But anyway, we work with small businesses, as was said, of all types, not just food businesses, not just Main Street businesses, but service businesses, manufacturing businesses, exporters, technology companies, all kinds of businesses. And so we've got a good perspective on what's going on in a small business and what it takes to be a small business. We've got some materials in the back, be a successful small business. We've got some materials in the back, and I'm happy to stick around afterwards and talk to anybody who would like to. But mostly what we do is free, confidential, one-on-one counseling with business owners. We run some classes. We have some market research capabilities, and we do a lot of networking, advocacy, putting you in touch with the resources that you need. And one thing I want to make sure you come away from today with is there's a ton of resources out there. There are a lot of people who want to help you be successful and help you to achieve the business that you're looking for. So we're one of those. Think Local First is another one. Growing Hope is another one. There's lots more. Washtenaw County is very excited about this. So look for help. It's probably there. If you can't find it, find the next best thing to it, and hopefully they can put you in the right direction. We're very non-competitive in this area. There's more than enough work for all of us doing entrepreneur support. So we really want to make sure you get to the resource that's going to be most effective for you. We'll talk a little bit about success tonight. That's kind of what the overall topic is you know, building blocks, recipes for success. So the question of what is success is really, it's different for everybody, and that's something you have to really keep track of and know for yourself. Some people, success is selling at the farmer's market and maybe making a few bucks and getting their products out there, and that is successful. Other people want to have national or international distribution. That's another form of success, and that's one that we can help you work towards achieving as well, but it really needs to be driven by yourself and whatever you want to achieve in your business, and that may change over time. Once you've reached one level of success, you may decide to move on to the next one. And if you're working with other people, then making sure that your idea of success matches up with their idea of success, because that often changes, and if you aren't aware that it's changing, that's something to keep track of. I'm just wondering, how many of you are in business with a partner of some sort already? Okay, so a fair number. So making sure you've got the same vision and that's evolving concurrently is going to be really important. Yeah, I'm going to talk also about business planning, and Ingrid asked me to keep it pretty basic and simple, which I will do, and it may be a little bit more familiar to many of you, but hopefully those of you who are beyond that, we can talk afterwards as well. But business planning is kind of an intimidating topic for a lot of people, and it really shouldn't be. So try to make it as simple as possible. I want to start off with a quick question, though. What's the difference between a hobby and a business? Anybody? I'm sorry?
A hobby you lose money.
A hobby you lose money? Not necessarily, but many times. What else?
According to the IRS, isn't anything over $500 not a hobby? Something like that.
The IRS has rules for what's a hobby and what's not a hobby, and I'm not a CPA, but I think that it's in those lines in the back there. Okay, maybe you do it more in your spare time. It's sort of a sidebar type of activity.
A hobby can be a business. You love a hobby, and a business you have to do.
Okay, so a hobby can be a business, and that's kind of where what I'm trying to get at. I'm sorry, one more.
A hobby is something you decide to put aside.
Okay.
You put your business aside, you may find yourself.
Okay, that's a very good point. A hobby is something you can walk away from when you need to. And the line between a hobby and a business in a lot of small businesses, and particularly a lot of food businesses, is kind of fuzzy. And that's why I wanted to start with that, because some of you may have hobbies, some of you may have businesses, some of you are not quite sure which you have. Maybe it goes back and forth a little bit. Maybe you have a hobby and you're thinking maybe it could be a business. So that's kind of where I wanted to start. And for me, the main differences are in a hobby, it's about the activity. You're doing it because you love to do it, and you're not really as concerned about the results. And it's about creativity and expressing yourself. Whereas in a business, it's about the results, particularly money, and it's about consistency, not creativity. So if I may have a hobby baking cookies, and I love to bake cookies, and I'll bring them in to work, and whatever cookies I make, people are happy with them. And I could spend a lot of time and a lot of money on those cookies, and everybody loves them, and it makes me happy. But that's a hobby. A business, those cookies better be the same every time, because if you go into the store looking for my cookies, and I decided to make them differently, well, you may not be very happy, because you were expecting something specific from me. And likewise, it's all about those results. Can I actually make enough money doing this to make it worthwhile spending time on it as a business, whether it's full-time or part-time? So a lot of it's a mindset, a lot of it's expectations, but it also is how much fun it is, and can you walk away from it? You can make money in a hobby, and you can lose money in a business. So then one last question, what's the best way to ruin a great hobby? Turn it into a lousy business. Okay, and that's something you really need to keep track of, because a lot of people will do that, and they'll have something that they love to do, and then they'll turn it into a business, and they can't walk away from it, and they're losing money, and they're stressed out, and people are mad at them, and now they don't have a good business, and they don't have a good hobby anymore either. So really be thinking about what is success, what are you trying to achieve, so that you're able to make it work for you in whatever way that is important. And I just want to reiterate, for us as business counselors, we're not about trying to tell you what your business should be. You tell us what it should be, and we'll help you try to find out how to get it there. So the first piece of advice that comes out of why am I asking about hobbies is to start small. Okay, you want to start your business small if you can. And not all businesses can be started small, because you want to manage risk. You want to learn a lot while you're doing it. It's a great opportunity to learn while the stakes are small. If you ruin a batch when it's a small batch, it's not that big a deal. To see if you like it. Is it sustainable? Right? Sustainability is a big topic that comes in a lot of ways around food systems and around the economy. For me, one important aspect of sustainability for entrepreneurs is, do I want to keep doing this? Right? Can I sustain my efforts in this direction, and what do I need to do to make that happen? Because if I can't keep doing it, then I want to get out as quickly as possible. So making sure you don't burn out is an important aspect of it. Another piece of advice for food businesses and Main Street businesses in general is it's really all about the execution. It's about how good is the product, how good is the service, how well do you market it, how do you get it out there. It's not about some great new innovation. It's not about a unique strategy. Most small businesses have very similar strategies in the same areas. It's all about the execution. And an example of that you know there's lots of restaurants, and they come and they go, and you know, you might say, if you look at a chart or a research, that we got plenty of restaurants in Washtenaw County, but you know there's some good ones that are going to come in and be successful, and you know that there's other ones that are never going to make it. My colleague at work today went to a new restaurant that had gotten some good reviews, and he came back and said, it was okay. You know, the food was okay, the prices were okay, the atmosphere was okay, it's kind of far, I don't know if I'll go back. Okay, well, so that's, you know, one person's example. It's not a bad restaurant, but is okay going to be good enough in those cases? So it is all about the execution, and that you get back to the consistency, it gets back to measuring and tracking and making sure you're doing it the same way over and over again, because that's what your customers are looking for. You have to know what the customer wants and give it to them consistently. It helps to have some unique features. It helps to have something different. I will say, to give David a little plug, his OG kimchi is the best kimchi I've ever gotten in a grocery store. So it's unique. It's kimchi, but I don't know what he does to it. He's got the other kinds too, but that's the one I like the best. And so his execution of kimchi works for me. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to keep buying it because I want to have a jar of kimchi in the refrigerator, and I like his best. So it was great that he was able to be on the panel here, but it's not that he's got some great new strategy for introducing Korean condiments into the Midwestern market. He just makes a really good product. The third piece of advice as far as thinking like a business, selling is hard. Right? Entrepreneurship is a contact sport. You got to get out and meet people. You got to get out and talk to people. You got to find suppliers. You got to find customers. You got to find other resources and assistance. But selling is hard. And nobody goes into business if they don't think that their product or service is great. I'm not going to try to sell my cookies in the farmer's market unless I think I've got the greatest cookies around. I'm not going to go and say, yeah, you know, some people like them, some people don't like them. They're okay. I'm not going to put the energy into doing that. So everybody thinks their product is good, but selling it is really hard. And if you're not the kind of person who likes to go out and sell, and you're not comfortable selling, then you need to really think about, is this something that you can turn into a business? Because that's a real challenging piece to a lot of people. And then the final piece of advice, and this is really kind of what comes down to the ultimate, you know, distinction between a business and a hobby, is a business has to make you money. It has to make money in the long run. You have to know what you're bringing in and what you're spending, and you have to be spending less than you're bringing in consistently, which means that you need to do good record keeping. You need to keep track of what are you spending and what are you bringing in, and you can't just, you know, throw it in your wallet and say, oh, I'll remember to track that later. You really need to have good records, and doing that analysis to say, well, if I could get this key product cheaper, then what does that do? If I can buy in bulk, what does that do? If I can share a delivery van with another similar business, if I can share an accountant with another similar business, what can I do to get my cost down, my facility costs, my product costs, my labor costs, so that I can compete? Because ultimately that's really what you're trying to do in having a business. And that's the heart of the business plan. You know I'd get to it eventually. The heart of the business plan is figuring out, what do I think is going to happen? What do I want to have happen? What might happen? And then, did it happen that way? And if not, why not? What can I do about it? Right? We'll get a lot of people who come in and it's, you know, how many tons of salsa do you have to sell to make this a successful business? And they might look at it and they say, there's no way I can do that. Okay, they're done. They've got a great hobby. People love their salsa. They cater. They give it away, whatever it is. But they can't make a business out of it the way it is. So you've got to figure out, what do I think will happen? How many of those can I sell reasonably, and how much time? How much is it going to cost me? And is the difference good enough to make this a worthwhile way to spend my time, to invest my money? Because ultimately you're buying yourself a job. Maybe you're buying some jobs for some other people, and you're making an investment of your hard-earned cash to decide, is this as good an investment as doing something else I could with it? And then that comes down to management. Okay, did I get what I thought I was going to get? If not, what do I have to do different? And you could think about an ice cream parlor. There's many ways ice cream parlors can fail, but one of the biggest and easiest to understand is how many scoops do you get out of the container of ice cream? If your plan is I'm going to get 40 cones out of every gallon of ice cream, and I'm making up those numbers, some of you may be in ice cream and know better. If you think you're going to get 40 and you only get 30, you're out of business. So that's a management issue. It's spoilage. It's training for your staff. It's how many are getting given away. Are you throwing it away at the end of the night because it's all runny and you can't sell it. But that's what it comes down to being a successful business, is can you get the right number of scoops out of the gallon container or not? And did you plan it correctly? Because you really need to be planning down to that level in order to be successful as a business. If you want to just make your ice cream and give it to your friends, it doesn't really matter how big the cones are. So in balancing out, how much can I charge for a cone compared to the other ice cream parlors in town? And how do I train people to scoop that consistently? That's the management part of running a successful business. All businesses need plans. They don't need to be the big, thick plans that you can get out of the library or get online. Do not buy Business Plan Pro. Don't go out and get software to write a business plan. Computer, Word, Excel is all you need, especially to get started. But you want to sit down and think about what's it going to cost, how many can I sell, what am I going to sell them for, and start thinking about, does this make sense, or do I need to go on to another idea? And many successful business owners, they go through a dozen ideas before they come up with one that's really going to work. Okay? Before they come up with something that says, yes, I can make these cheap enough and sell them for enough that this looks like it's a real business. Right? Nobody ever does a hobby plan, right? You just do it. You like it, you do it. You stop liking it, you stop. It doesn't really matter. Maybe you have a garage full of stuff and you give it away or you use it up over time, but you don't need to write a plan because it doesn't really matter. And the key parts of the business plan, how much will you sell? When will you sell it? Who will you sell it to? How much will you get for it? And how much will it cost you? And all the rest is really refinement. So if you can figure those things out and make it work, then you can sharpen your pencil and dig deeper and see if it really looks like you've got a business there. I thought it was interesting. I don't know how many of you saw it's now the Ann Arbor News again. They had an article about backyard chickens, which was I live in Ann Arbor, and backyard chickens was a big topic a few years ago. Did anybody see that? Or do we have any backyard chicken raisers in the audience?
I know the rules here.
Okay. So the question really came down to is, can you make a business out of raising chickens in your backyard and selling the eggs and maybe selling the meat? And what they pretty much decided was, after the startup costs, it's very difficult to make any money on it, because you buy the coops and the electricity and you got to get the birds and all of that stuff, and it's really hard to get that money back. So to think about, it may be a great hobby. You get fresh eggs, you get to give them to your friends, you get to maybe bring them into work and sell them to a few people for a few bucks. So that may all be fine and good, but to make a business out of it is something that's going to be really challenging. And so just a little to kind of build on that example, you have to I talked about knowing what your costs are. There's three kinds of costs associated with backyard chickens. There's the startup costs. So the question of, what does it cost to open my door? What do I need? Do I need a cart? Do I need a restaurant? Do I need a store? Do I need a kitchen of some sort? What is it that I need to get the doors open and get started? Then there's the variable costs. So for every egg that you sell, you've got a certain amount of feed and maybe a certain amount of other things directly associated with that, maybe labor. And then you've got the fixed costs, or things like the utilities and the effort that goes in. I think with chickens I decided labor is a fixed cost, because it doesn't matter how many chickens you have. You go out and you feed them and you collect the eggs and it's about the same. That may be wrong, I don't know. But I want to get to the point that a lot of this stuff is not necessarily cut and dried. You've got to make sense of it yourself. You want to talk to people who know something about accounting, who know something about business metrics and tracking, so that you can come up with ways of looking at your business that make sense to you. And the question of, how do you want to value your labor in this business? Right? If you're an engineer for an automotive company and you're making good money, Do you want to value your time with the backyard chickens the same as you would at work? Or maybe you want to value it differently. If you're staying at home and you're maybe a student and you're not making money doing other things, maybe the cost of your labor is different. But you have to think about what makes sense for you and what's going to make it worthwhile for you to do this. Because part of understanding those startup costs is then you've got to spread those out over however much time or many products you can to be able to decide if this is a good business. So that's called amortization. So that's your business vocabulary word for the day. Amortization is spreading costs over a period of time or series of products. So if you say, for example, that you spend $1,000 to get your chicken coop up and equipped, then maybe you want to take $1 of that and assign it to the first 1,000 eggs that you sell. Well, that makes it that much more difficult to make a profit on those eggs because all of a sudden they got $1 more expensive. Okay, so you have to factor that in to your whole discussion. So we talked about what are your eggs, what do they cost you? Then the question is, what are they worth? And who wants them? Why do they want them? And how much will they pay? So there's competition for eggs, right? There's no shortage of eggs in Washtenaw County, but you know your eggs are different. So who's going to pay more for your eggs? Because those are, hand harvested, lovingly raised by, chickens that you have named and are watching diligently compared to the ones you can get in the supermarket. Well, it's worth it to somebody, maybe. That's what you have to find out. So figuring out how much more are they willing to pay for your eggs than the Meyer eggs. And then you got to look at the different kinds of revenue that you can get. How many eggs am I going to have, and how do I sell those? If I just have a few, maybe I just bring them into work and sell them to the people at work. Maybe if I have a little bit more, I go to the farmer's market and I sell them at the farmer's market. Or I have a farm stand, or my neighbor has a farm stand and I bring them there. Maybe I sell them to a wholesaler who sells them to the grocery stores, but obviously you need a whole lot of eggs to be able to do that. And the problem is you can move a lot of eggs that way, but you're not going to get very much money. And so looking at that distinction between how much can I get and how much can I sell and how much effort is it helps you figure out that breakdown. So if you're selling at the farmer's market right now, you're selling to the end user and I'm paying the full price. I'm going to pay that same price at the store, but you're not going to get that full price because the store's got to get their cut. Or maybe I can sell them to a restaurant or a local store that only has a few outlets and doesn't need the same kind of volume. But all of that takes time, it's expensive, it takes a lot of initiative to go out and find those buyers. So those are the kinds of things that you have to figure out in terms of, can I make a business out of raising these chickens and harvesting their eggs? And then you get into more costs. So am I marketing? Am I transporting them? Do I have liability concerns? All of those kinds of things that maybe you don't have to the same degree if it's a hobby. So just to summarize quickly, start small if you can. It's really good to learn either on somebody else's dime or when the risks are low. It's all about the execution. So making sure that your product is as good as it can be and that it's filling a customer need. Remember, selling is hard. If you don't want to sell, don't even think about going into business, or find someone who can sell for you. Keep track of the important things. So you may not need to keep track of every item, every paper clip that you use on the business, but you want to be fair to yourself about what is it really costing to do this. Make changes if you need to, right? In the tech world, they call it pivoting. It's a very trendy concept right now, but make changes. Okay, maybe the farmer's market isn't the place to be. Maybe there is another store you can go to, whatever it happens to be. Remember, your costs have to be less than your revenue over time, and then ask for help. There's lots of help out there, and take advantage of it. There's nothing that upsets us more in the office than someone comes in and says, I'm going out of business on Tuesday if you can't work a miracle for us, because we can't. But if you tell us, 3 months in advance, this is what it's looking like, and I'm worried, then maybe there's a chance that you can do something. So ask for help and stay on top of things. And if the news looks bad, that's not a reason to not pay attention to it. It's a reason to pay attention to it more. appreciate your attention, and I will stick around afterwards for any questions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Klingenberger, and I own the Brinery, and I guess I'm going to give a little history of it. Excuse me if you've already heard it before, because I probably talk about it a lot, any chance I have, but I'm here to speak about my business. It started 3 years ago, and we make fermented vegetables, pickles, sauerkraut, and kimchi. And forgive me if you already know this story, but I think there's a lot of great points that have been risen by these speakers, and I would definitely agree with pretty much everything that was said. I came out of the community here. I was a farmer on a local farm, Tantray Farm. That's a pretty good-sized organic vegetable farm in a CSA. I never went to college. I went straight to working on the farm, so I got real, I'd call it an education, and it was a really good education. It served me really well, so I kind of made a lot of life decisions. That the farmer Richard, who owns Tantray Farm, had an excess of cabbage in 2009, the fall of 2009, and I was coming back from out west, and I'd farmed off and on for the past decade, and he had a lot of cabbage left over, and sauerkraut is when it really comes down to is food preservation. And I've always been really interested by growing food, but also preserving it in very kind of pure ways, like, you know, making sauerkraut or canning it, making tomato sauce or something like that. So he had about 70 extra cases of cabbage, and I started making sauerkraut with it. And I guess one of my main points I'd bring up throughout this is the idea of social capital. I had $300 in my pocket, but I had a network of people like Tantray Farm and other local restaurants and farmers and all kinds of people in the community who I had developed relationships with over the past decade. And during the time, I didn't realize I was building a network. I was building social capital. And so when I saw this cabbage that Richard had, I started to make sauerkraut with it. He was very helpful. He gave me all kinds of opportunities. He helped me to I sold it illegally off of his farmer's market stall when I didn't have a license. I don't mind sharing all this kind of stuff. I think it's really fun. I feel impunity now. I can talk about that. Yeah, so I sold it without a license, and I would so much recommend that. Is, you know, you can have the best idea in the world, but if it's an idea, because I'm a real dreamer and I have to always live with my head in the clouds a little bit, but you got to have this practicality, and it's like you can have the best idea in the world, but if you've never really done it, then to me, it's like that just doesn't make sense to me. I'm very hand-to-mouth kind of, you know, tangible kind of person. So making that sauerkraut was like this trial period, and I got to sell it, and I got to sell these test batches, and I was like, wow, I have this thing that has worked. I sold sauerkraut, and I had earned enough money to buy a van, and then things kind of just went from there, and I started, and I found another person, Jane Bush from Appleschram Orchard. She's also really involved with FSEP and the Washtenaw Food Hub, and great, you know, person in that regard. And she had an old like little kitchen at her orchard, and so I was driving up with this van I bought off of selling legal sauerkraut to drive up to her orchard up in Lansing area, like 2.5 hours away, and I'd get some kids who were really excited to help, and we'd load them up. I'd put them in the back of the van on top of this pile of cabbage, and we'd drive up there, and I got a license up there, and I started making legal kraut and kimchi, and because I started making kimchi because there was no local green cabbage, but there was some Napa cabbage, and I was like, oh, well, I really want to start this business right now, so I better just start making kimchi. And then kimchi became a really popular item for us. And then I was driving back to Ann Arbor and just selling at the farmer's market, and I felt flush at that point because I had no overhead. I just had this van. I had these volunteer local kids who were really excited to help me, and I paid them in kimchi, and we would drive up there and have like a crazy kimchi party, and then drive back the next day, and I'd sell it at the farmer's market, and it just kind of grew from there. So speaking of business plans, so fast forward to 3 years, now I have 9 employees. We're very ambitious. I never knew I was this ambitious for this kind of thing, and so my goal really is to grow this business and to employ people and be a true, you know, pillar, like a foundation of a local foods community. Keep working with wonderful farms. And the bigger we grow, I never want to lose that heart, and I want to keep working with great local farms. You know, I'm really excited about our garlic project. The Dyers here grow awesome garlic, and we're going to make like a very special garlicky batch. Those are things that really inspired me, but as we grow our business, you know, we're selling to Whole Foods, we're going to be selling to Chicago. This whole idea of a local foods business we're local, but then, are we local to Chicago? Are we local? How does it all work as we really grow this business? Those are things I'm thinking about. And as we grow this business, so I want to keep this I want to keep local with our heart and be centered in this community. Go to farmers markets, work with local farms, and as well as we grow this this business and really start to sell and create a product that is not local to other places, but it's an export product from Michigan, I guess, is what's happening with some of that stuff. So we're in about 50 stores and restaurants around Michigan. We're starting to make inroads into Chicago. We have a farmers market booth in Chicago on Sundays at the Logan Square Market, and we're going to be in all the Whole Foods around there. And so I'm very ambitious. I want to grow this business into quite a large economic force, but somehow always maintaining a core and really always honoring that social capital that enabled me to go where we are. It's funny, we're talking about business plans. Full disclosure, we're just finishing up our first business plan ever, 3 years into it. And one thing I would recommend is listen to these folks. They're really smart. And definitely listen to them, but I'm just going to give my perspective. I listened to a lot of advice, but I felt like I had the right blend of bullheadedness and also listening skills. So I listened to good advice, and some of it I ignored, and I think that's okay sometimes to just believe in what you're doing and kind of just do it. And I would really recommend more than anything else is just to make your product or whatever it is and get 10 or 20 people or whoever, 50 people that and kind of stack the deck. Get people who are going to believe in you no matter what, like your mom and dad or your brother who are going to love whatever you make, but just start making it and getting it to people and just start getting your feet underneath you. When I started my business, the whole metaphor, I like metaphors and stuff, or catchphrases I should say, was hitting the ground running. I just thought of this idea of you could sit in a room and develop this perfect idea and it's all intangible and it's all kind of this on paper, but I really, really am a big proponent of hitting the ground running and without too much overhead, of course, but just, trialing it out, get whatever it is in front of people and get that momentum. It's a good thing to get momentum without going into debt or anything like that. So yeah, social capital is awesome. I think that it's hard if you are making a big transition from a different life and you don't really have a lot of connections to the area that you're wanting to build a business, like with local food or something. But the more that you can kind of collaboration is key. I'll be honest, I had somebody who I trust very much pretty much ghostwrite my business plan. I know my strong suits. It's not writing and arithmetic and stuff, but I'm a very collaborative person. I own the business. It's an LLC, but I'm developing a really great group of people. I need to trust people because my ego's not too big to let me think that I can do everything. Like these folks are talking about, you need a collaborative team. There's great resources out there. Another great organization I worked with was the Product Center. I don't know if it was mentioned, but they're out of MSU. They're specific to food-related businesses. Frank Gublio was my dude from there. He's awesome. They're very helpful. I worked with the Michigan Small Business Technology Development Center as well. And but yeah, so I really am into utilizing that social capital and using the network and not being afraid of making mistakes on a small scale. Keep it small at first for sure. My ambition 6 months ago, I thought I was going to be getting a huge loan and growing very rapidly, and we didn't get the loan. The bank was very polite, but they said, "There's no way we're going to lend you money to make sauerkraut right now." And I was kind of, after the fact I learned this stuff, I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, I guess, from their point of view. If we go under or whatever, they're sitting on a bunch of sauerkraut. They don't see that as good equity. Yeah. So we're in the Friends and Family stage. We just finished our business plan 3 years later. We're very successful. We've doubled production and profits every year. We're really just growing. But now we're at the stage to really grow. We're moving to this new location called the Washtenaw Food Hub, which I'm sure plenty of you have heard about. It's a really exciting project. The farmer Richard, speaking of the social capital in this network, Richard Andres of Tantray Farm is a kind of insane visionary, and he bought this property. It's just north of Ann Arbor, and there's 2 grants netted to build this place out and put in solar panels. And right now as we speak, well, probably just they're done right now because of the end of the day, but they're building this place. It's going to be a brand new food production facility for the Brinery, as well as an incubator for other businesses, and hopefully, like, as it grows, a co-op of different local foods businesses. And so, yeah, so that's where we are now, and we're about to shop around this business plan, and we're in the friends and family stage. They're going to get us to the next level where the bank will finally like us, but we're looking for $100,000 within the next few months to really do this build out at the food hub and to grow our business. And it feels like it's a really exciting place because I feel like we've grown throughout this past few years, but we're really at this place with this like real tangible business plan and a real idea like we never had before about really what our growth is and what we're looking for. So it's an exciting time. And that being said, I do think you should write up some kind of a plan and not just charge blindly forward like I always tend to do. But yeah, so I'm really excited to maybe transition this over to more of question and answer. I think a lot of you are very intelligent, passionate people who probably have some great talking points and stuff. Are we at that kind of point? Oh yeah, oh I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I'm gonna pass this off and then, yeah, all right.
Wow. So, David, you took part of my job here because a lot of the people that you talked about are people who are going to be at our next series in Workshop 2. Frank Gublo from the Michigan State University Product Center is going to be here. And we're going to have Dan Vernia, who is a chef and a co-founder of the Washtenaw Food Hub, which David spoke about both. And then we're also going to have Marcy Bishop Cates. And she started a place called Incubate, which is an incubator kitchen, commercial kitchen up in Holt, Michigan. She's got 21 businesses running out of it, so she's going to come talk about her model. And then we're also going to have Mary Wessel Walker of Harvest Kitchen. So we'll have our real world application person, and she has a business right up here in Depot Town. So that's what's coming up for Workshop 2. And before we go into question and answer, because I know some of you are going to probably... Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and just get started. So, question from the audience.
I know David used Kickstarter, correct, for his, pardon me?
Indiegogo.
Oh, okay. Well, I was wondering if you could just comment generally on the role of social media, maybe trying to get a business started.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about crowdfunding, which is what you are referencing. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, those are different programs, and each one offers you different options depending on which one you enroll in. And I'm getting confused. Is Indiegogo, is that the one where you have to have all of meet your goal, or is it Kickstarter? Okay. So, and I'm not sure if this is answering your question, because David is probably the better one for that, and maybe I'll let you answer it again. But what she was referencing is crowdfunding, which is a way to put your idea out on the internet and ask others to help fund it. And you can be rewarded in ways of which you determine what those rewards are. I have a friend who's Patty Branham's husband, and she's in the audience. Her husband did a crowdfunding for his album. And if you pledged so much money, then you got an album. And it was a way to raise the capital to get the album produced. So that's what a crowdfunding platform is. But I'm not sure I've answered your question. And if you want to come back up, David is now back. It was about social media.
Could I speak to that? I feel like I could speak to that because I learned a lot of what not to do when doing crowdfunding. You can easily get in over your head. We overwhelmed ourselves with just the management of it. We didn't budget time, and I think that's some of the leading issues with crowdfunding is the follow through. And a lot of businesses I've talked to have had issues with the follow through because people are giving you this wonderful gift, and then it's for some small businesses you're creating a whole. It's a huge management of managing the prizes, and if you're creating a special prize and just getting those out and getting them out timely, and who's in control of it. And for our small business, as we're growing rapidly, it was definitely something that we didn't budget right for. So that was one thing I would caution about crowdfunding is making sure you leave enough time to and energy to handle it. Yes.
I want to tell you just briefly about crowdfunding. There's a lot of different types of crowdfunding, a lot of things that fall under the umbrella of crowdfunding. Kickstarter and Indiegogo are probably the best known and are getting a lot of publicity because they're internet-based and you can reach a very broad audience. It's very challenging to be successful, and even if you are successful, as David was, it's still challenging. What a lot of food businesses and local businesses are doing is essentially pre-selling, and the corner here actually was very successful with that, where they, through their, I think it's a beer mug or Stein Club, you can prepay for some beer, and then they have a mug here for you that you can then get discounted beer for, I think, the rest of your life. But there's all different ways of doing that. There's been restaurants locally that have sold meals ahead of time and have raised, in the 5-figure amounts by pre-selling that way. So there's a lot of different things that you can do creatively that are less challenging than a full-blown Kickstarter campaign. And I'd be happy to talk about that with anybody afterwards.
And I just want to add that for those of you who want to learn more about this topic, there's a fabulous book called Loca Vesting by Amy Cortez. We brought her in last October to talk about her book. It's fascinating if you want to, and it's full of wonderful food stories. So if you want to get pumped up about starting your food-based business, read this book because I guarantee you it'll give you all kinds of great ideas. Loca Vesting, L-O-C-A V-E-S-T-I-N-G, Amy Cortez, C-O-R-T-E-S-E. Fascinating book.
All right, thanks for this time. I'd like to thank the panel for being here. I organized a 501c3 and I worked for a different 501c3, and I had more of a couple clarifications. I might consider utilities as a variable cost, not fixed. Just clarify. And then if you create 250 jobs here, are 250 people losing their jobs somewhere else? And could we instead focus on international products, especially that use freedom-stricken people for manufacturing? Thanks. Oh, sorry.
So there was a 3-part question.
Okay, so 1, utilities would be a variable cost, not a fixed cost.
Do you know, Charlie?
Yeah, I don't think so, but we can talk about it offline.
And then if you create 250 jobs here, are you losing 250 jobs somewhere else in the domestic?
No, that's not necessarily.
The national?
That's not necessarily true. You're not necessarily losing 250 jobs somewhere else.
Okay.
Local food being more labor intensive and less capital intensive in many cases may mean that you're literally have a net job.
So there'd be more
creation.
Job creation than job losing somewhere else.
It really depends on how labor intensive the product is. I mean,
Okay.
it's hard to know, compared to doing it on a mass scale. So that's not necessarily.
And is there a specific focus on? The third question was on replacing the manufacturing jobs in like freedom-stricken places.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to suggest that we're trying to. So our spending dollars, most of the jobs that we create out of spending on local businesses, a few of those jobs are on the local business themselves, and a lot of those jobs are simply by keeping money circulating locally. So when we're talking about creating jobs locally, we're not really focused on taking jobs back from somewhere else. The real net gain is that when companies are publicly held, or maybe even held by hedge funds and held by large institutions, those profits just go to a large institution. Whereas when a company is locally owned, it's really the ownership that creates jobs, because the locally owned company, those profits stay circulating in the community. That owner then goes and spends their profits buying products locally, and so it circulates in the community. So it's really more about ownership than the location. It's about having a direct connection with the products and buying from products that are owned by somebody who's accountable and responsible for that product. I mean, this is just my personal opinion, compared to buying products from companies that are are absentee owned. They're owned by a mutual fund or by your, your IRA fund, and nobody's directly nobody's directly interacting with making the decisions about how they produce that food, what ingredients go in it. So it's the ownership that creates jobs, the ownership model, more than about stealing a job from some other location.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. My question is more directed toward Charlie. You were mentioning, getting your business plan together, that when you're starting up, it doesn't have to be, you're not looking at anything to be complicated, the big 30-page type of business plan. When you're making that up and you're trying to get going to get one, especially if you wanted to try to get a loan or something at the bank and they want more information, what types of things baseline do you need to have in that? Do you need to do market research on your own to try to figure out, kind of what your other type of competition might be, or is that something you would include, or how basic can you be and still accomplish what you need to progress?
So the format of your business plan needs to reflect the audience that you're writing the business plan for. And the first audience is yourself. If you are writing it for a bank, then you need to have other things in it that a bank will want to see, and things like vegetables are not good collateral is something that you learn. So banks want to see certain things, and we do run trainings about what does it take to get a bank loan and how to go through that process. A bank will want to see probably 3 years of financial projections. They'll want your credit score is the big thing. So especially for a very small loan, you are the business is you, and they're lending it to you almost regardless of the business. So if you've got equity in your home, it's easy to get a loan. If you have a very good credit score, it's easy to get a loan. Probably not $100,000, but maybe 10 or 20, which may be enough to get you through that next step. If you're doing a friends and family round, you probably should have a pretty good business plan for them, because you owe it to them to show them that this is a good business. But maybe not exactly the same as what the bank wants. You may not show your tax returns in a friends and family round. So it may be more complicated from a financial projection standpoint. As far as the marketing, I'm not a huge believer in doing in-depth analysis of competition for most small businesses. It's really a question of, do you have customers? Where do you think you're going to be able to sell to? Why do you think this price is justified? So that may be a competitive analysis. But it would be more on those types of things that you can show that you have a market, as opposed to any real in-depth analysis of a lot of competitors. And we can talk afterwards more about that if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got another question.
I had a question for David. You mentioned that you went to a farmer's market in Logan Square. I actually grew up in that community, and I was wondering why you went to Chicago. Are you trying to get a foothold with your products there, and how is that working out?
Well, Logan Square is very cool, as you know. It's part of our expansion of where we're selling, our distribution. Chicago, we're working on kind of really saturating Michigan with our product line, and Chicago is a real, as we expand our business, Chicago is within that, our distribution is 4 hours away, and I'm really, I think about like selling our stuff up to Traverse City, it's just about the same distance-ish. So
yeah, we have the same vision, and I've thought about the markets in Chicago to introduce the products. In fact, they just had a food show at Millennium Park that it was too late for me to get into, and I want to try and get into that next year.
What's it called?
It was a food show at Millennium Park.
Is it called the Good Food Festival?
It was a gourmet food festival,
right.
And I mean, it would be a great place, and I know the markets in the city.
Yeah.
Were they difficult to get into, and you know, how have you done there?
So we're just really initially getting our toe in there. I just spent last week down in Chicago. Logan Square Market is working for us because of a collaboration. I'm really big on meeting up with people and collaborating. There's this awesome charcuterie business out of Madison. They make salami, really good cured meats. And I met them at a pop-up market in Chicago, and they're out of Madison. They got a booth at this Logan Square Sunday market, and they make cured meats. I make cured vegetables. It was a real, you know, it goes together really well. And we, you know, got business crushes on each other, and they are distributing our stuff at that market stall. And for part of me, I started my business at a farmer's market. And I can't think of any better way to get your feet underneath you and hit the ground running than being at a farmer's market. So little overhead. You don't have to buy a storefront.
Right.
It's a shared collective environment. You have a really interested, it's every time you go, it's like market research, and you can sell your products to people and get feedback. And for me, moving into Chicago, as we get into the big stores and everything and really grow our business there, you know, there's something so wonderful. Whenever I go to a new town, I want to go see what's at the farmer's market. You get to, that's where people are gathering. There's wholesome food and, you know, stuff like that. So to me, it was a no-brainer to like get in on the grassroots in Chicago at these farmers markets, and then as we expand our business, you know, there's already a kind of a buzz built and everything. So yeah, farmers markets are 100% like the most amazing way to jumpstart a business. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we do a number of markets here. We have stores. I mean, we've sold over 45,000 pints of salsa in a little over 3 years.
You have a salsa business?
Yeah.
Nice.
And one of the things that we wanted to do was branch out to Chicago. We have people we know there. We can set up a network and
awesome.
And
you got home court advantage, man. If you're a Chicago boy, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know if it was difficult to get into those markets.
I think for me, I feel, I don't know what it is. Like, I feel like I have I don't have competition. For salsa, you're going to have way more competition. If you're roasting coffee, you're going to have way more competition. There's really not that many artisan fermented food businesses around. And so there's really no competition. And I feel like I just kind of charge forward just knowing that it's a great product and it's a healthy thing. I think with salsa or coffee or anything, things you're going to have more difficulty because there's going to already be a few salsa people probably at these markets.
You haven't tasted our salsa yet.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure it's the best salsa. Yeah. Thank you.
And there's some on the back table.
Oh, nice.
It's not gone.
Hi guys, thanks for being here. Sorry I wasn't here at the beginning. We appreciate the partnership. I'm Amanda from Growing Hope. I just want to make 2 actual other announcements I thought per some of the other questions would be helpful. There's a great day-long free conference at U of M Business School, I think Friday, October 11th, all about social impact investing. So from crowdsourcing to some of the tools that nonprofits have to a number of the different things out there. They're bringing in great speakers from all over the country. So it's free, just look it up online. I think it's called, Charlie, do you know, Social Impact and Investing Conference or something like that, but free all-day thing. So I'm excited to learn from some of the best. Really, workshops going into a lot of the different kind of tools for investments that many food businesses also have some sort of a social impact as well. So then secondly, just wanted to let folks know if anyone is interested in looking at business planning around healthy food retail in lots of different forms that takes in underserved areas where there's limited access to healthy food. There are federal funds that are available that some of us in the state are working to draw down. So just come talk to me about that, and we'd love to be further connected from grocery store size from the ground up to smaller endeavors that are increasing healthy food access. Not super small, but decently small. We're also working to develop a statewide like $30 to $50 million financing fund, because what you're saying about not having this sort of access to the capital is a challenge in a lot of parts of the food business. So we're trying to solve that, particularly from the healthy food access standpoint. But if you're interested in healthy food retail, come talk. So that's all. Thanks.
And for those of you who didn't understand who that was speaking to you, it's Amanda Edmonds, and she's the brainchild behind Growing Hope. Good. Does anybody else have any questions? Any more questions? I mean, the panel will still be up here, or we'll stick around to talk. It looks like we've got one more.
I just have one question about when do you become an LLC? I know you said you were one, so. Well, anybody who.
When did I?
Or when would a business become an LLC?
Oh, so I could probably pass this off. Just from my personal experience, it was when I decided to start the business and I thought, how am I going to structure this? LLC, the advice I was given, and part of it was one of the first talks with Michigan Small Business Technology Rural Development Center. Yeah, but that was part of the encouragement was to do an LLC. It's the simplest. It's a sole. I'm a sole owner, but then you can add people on as you go, and it seems like a really smart, basic way to start. You know, before you're trying to start a corporation or something, or LLC seems like the most straightforward for a new business. That was my experience with that.
Yeah. So an LLC is a limited liability company, and I'm not a lawyer and I can't give legal advice, so I need to say that anytime this kind of question comes up, you should really talk to an attorney about it. If you're dealing with food, you probably have more liability than you want as an individual person because, again, you are the business is you. If somebody gets sick and thinks it's because of your product, they can sue you, and pretty much everything you own is at risk. So your house, your car, your cash. I don't think your retirement funds are at risk, but you do carry a lot of risk as an individual. An LLC helps protect you from that risk to a pretty large extent, and there are certain things you have to do to ensure that you get that protection. But if you get much beyond, I'm not sure if I'm just doing this for fun or not, as David said pretty early on, if you think you're serious about this, you want either an LLC or a corporation to protect your personal assets from lawsuits. And there's other issues around that too, but that's a big one.
And the other question I have is, do you work with attorneys that help people out in this, with your group?
we can make recommendations,
Okay.
and there's a lot of small business attorneys who are very good at this sort of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Well, if something comes to mind, I'm sure the panelists will be here for a little bit. We all haven't had a chance to have a beer, and we are at the Corner Brewery, so. So thank you all for coming. I really am so pleased to see such a great crowd here. I need to do a shout out one more time to the people who made this possible, and they're over here. Marianne Nisley from Whole Foods. Christine Easley and Justin Smith from Growing Hope. And I'm Ingrid Alt from Think Local First.